Every single one of us has internal conversations happening all day long. And whether you realize it or not, these conversations are shaping your decisions. They shape whether you move forward or maybe if you stay stuck, whether you take the risk or maybe you play small, whether you build confidence or feed that anxiety. The problem is, most people don't know how to identify the voice that they're listening to because inside your head, there are usually three voices competing for control: the critic, the comforter, and the coach. And whichever one is loudest usually wins. So today, on a brand new episode of the Pursuit of Progress podcast, my co-host Ben and I want to break down what each of these three voices sounds like, how it affects your progress, and how to strengthen the one that actually moves your life forward. Let's just jump right into it on a brand new episode. Ben, what is up?
Oh, so glad to be back for another impactful episode. Now, let me ask you this. Have you heard your own critic, comforter, and coach?
Yes, definitely the critic. The comforter, yeah, a little bit. I don't know. I'm thinking if I had to rank the three, I'd say the critic's probably the one I hear the most.
Okay.
The coach is probably the second most, and I'd say the comforter is probably the third in that lineup. But what about yourself?
Do you feel like the critic? Do you feel like you hear the critic as often now? Has that changed over the years as far as who you hear more?
Yeah, I'd say the critic has rose to the top mainly just because of social media and this crazy world we live in where everything is such a comparison. You know, you're looking at everybody's highlight reels and thinking, why am I not further along and like this other person is? Or, you know, you're just always kind of analyzing or comparing yourself to others. And for me, that's where the critic comes in. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of that critic inner voice. I feel like as I've gotten a little bit older and matured, I have more of a balance with that. When I was younger, though, man, I mean, it was like 95% critic. I mean, it was critic just all day long. If I did something wrong or didn't show up on time or, didn't meet my goal, didn't get the grade, didn't say the right thing, man, I was so critical of me, just so critical. And the internal dialogue that I would have with myself over the years, like I would never talk to a friend that way, the way that I was talking to me. Just very like condescending, very critical. And I think you're right. I think we still, all of us still have those things. And I notice the critic a little bit. What really drives my critic coming out is when I feel like I am under the gun from like a timing perspective, or if I'm running late. And you're probably laughing because, most mornings I'm late to the gym, like 5 or 7 minutes. But I'm like, why am I running late or dropping the kids off to school? Just that critic will come out. So let's talk about the critic first. The critic is the voice that most people know very well because it's usually the loudest. The critic says you're behind, you're not ready, you'll fail, you're not good enough. It's constant self-judgment, comparison, and negative loops. The critic is often disguised as realism, but it creates hesitation, low confidence, and overthinking. The critic doesn't protect your future, it paralyzes it. Now, as I've gotten a little bit older, I've had different mentors and I've done a lot of coaching. I've had relationship coaching, business coaching, and I've learned to really value kind of the coach voice a little bit more as well. And I wouldn't, like, for me, I wouldn't call it a comforter. I'd call it more of a friend. Like, how would I, like, if I saw a friend kind of going through a difficult time or a challenge, that's kind of like what my comforter is. Like, how would I talk to that person? Like, I try and build them up, reinforce them. Let's try again tomorrow. Let's put a plan together. But that critic, though, is the one that will kind of really drive you crazy if you let it.
Yeah, I think the comforter and the critic, they're friends with each other, yet they're also kind of the opposite of one another. So that, the critic beats you up. The comforter is the one that just talks you out of growing. The comforter is the one that's saying, it's okay, maybe later. Don't stress about it. Just relax tonight.
Okay.
Wait until the timing is a little bit better. It sounds kind, it sounds reasonable, but that constantly is also justifying just inaction and just not doing anything about it. The
Yeah.
critic's the one that creates the fear. The comforter is the one that creates that just stagnation, just kind of this. I don't, just don't really care about anything. You're just kind of,
It's okay, sweetie.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
The
let's
comforter
let's
is
go get some ice cream, and we'll watch the movie. Hey, we'll do it tomorrow.
exactly. It's dangerous because it sounds supportive, but actually it's quietly really keeping you stuck.
Okay. I was misinterpreting that. I was thinking more of like a friend. Like, how is a friend going to build somebody up? But you're absolutely right, though. Man, the comforter, because you're right. It's like last night, for example, I was supposed to go run, and I didn't run because I was tired. I hadn't eaten, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just do more tomorrow. I'll just run like a little extra tomorrow, and I won't run tonight.
It's that voice.
Is that comforter, man?
What you needed that third voice, the coach, to step in at that point.
And how do you know if you're listening to the coach voice? Well, this is how you know. The coach is calm, the coach is honest, and the coach is action oriented. The coach is going to say things like, yes, this is uncomfortable, but do it anyway. Do it anyway, one step at a time. The coach is going to say, learn from this or keep going. It's not emotional, not dramatic, it's grounded. The coach voice creates progress, resilience, and clarity. The coach doesn't promise easy, it points you towards better. And for example, I have my girlfriend Grace. She loves to help out, and she contributes in so many different ways to our household. She doesn't live here, but she'll come over and just help out. She knows that I have 2 kids, 3 dogs, and so she's so generous with her time, with her energy, her chores, the things that she does for us. But sometimes, like, she'll ask, like, what if I didn't want to do this, or what if I stopped doing some of these things for you? And like, first of all, it's like, I don't necessarily even want you doing these things, because I don't feel like it's fair for me to even ask you. And I don't ask you, I don't ask her to do those things. She just does them out of the goodness of her heart. But at the same time, I always share with her, it's like, it's not necessarily about what I want. It's about what needs to get done. And so if you stop doing those things, although I appreciate them immensely, I would, we would still need to get them done, and I would find a way to get those done.
Yeah, I like that. I kind of like just to share one more thing on my end before we wrap this one up, just about how most people are actually being run by the wrong two voices, and that seems pretty obvious after what we've been talking about. But most people spend their entire day just bouncing between the two, which are self-criticism and self-comfort. The critic, again, it's saying you're failing, you're doing a bad job. The comforter is saying, oh, don't worry about it, just avoid any of that discomfort. And what that happens between those two voices is nothing, no movement. The cycle creates overthinking, guilt, definitely a lack of confidence, and very, very little actual progress. So just really, I think being able to understand, and this is something that takes probably a lot of time. I'm speaking this from not a place of being an expert at this, but being able to identify this within your head when these voices are in your head talking, being able to at least identify them and then be able to tell that voice, nope, not today. I'm going to, do what it needs to be done. I'm going to listen to that coach voice and not these other two.
Me and coach. So how do you strengthen the coach voice? Well, the coach voice does not become louder by accident. It's one of those voices and mentalities that you have to build. There's really 3 practical ways that you can build your coach voice: journaling and awareness. That's a great way to build out the habit and make that coach voice louder. Become more aware of what your thoughts are. Put those on paper. Catch the voice in real time. Let me ask you this: do you ever talk to yourself out loud, or like
Not often.
have conversations with yourself out loud?
Not out loud. Maybe when I was younger, or if I do something really stupid, then I'll say something out loud. But
I am constantly talking to myself when I'm by myself, and sometimes I'll even have people around me. But I'm constantly having conversations with myself. And if you've never been around me, people think it's so strange. You're like, who's he talking to? I'm like, well, I'm talking to me. I'm just having a conversation with me. But
it's awesome.
Ironically, that's a sign of geniuses. Geniuses have conversations with themselves out loud.
I had to throw that in there.
Another way is to ask, what would the disciplined version of me do? That's why I think it's so important to have this like vision of yourself. Like, who do you want to become? What do you want your life to look like? What kind of life do you want to have? And really imagine and envision what you would look like. And ask yourself, what does that version of me do? How does that version of me behave? You also want to make sure that you're keeping promises to yourself, because evidence builds coaching authority. So if you're constantly keeping promises to yourself, you're going to become more confident and you're going to have that authority. And that's one thing that I always say to my kids is you're going to become a strong, powerful, resilient person when you can develop that discipline and commitment. It doesn't mean that you're going to be the best, but you are going to be a powerful, resilient person who can overcome a tremendous amount of adversity.
What a gift to teach your kids that at a young age. That's something that I think is not talked about enough, but is incredibly imperative on just growth for kids and just
Yeah.
building that confidence, building all of the stuff we've been talking about at a young age. I love that.
That's a great point. I feel like in 2026, there's a lot more podcasts, there's a lot more resources out there for young people, where I feel like our generation, I don't feel like these types of conversations were as common. And I don't think there were as many like role model. It doesn't mean that the role models weren't there, but maybe they were not there as intentional as some of the outlets and resources are in today. And so one thing that I'll talk to some of my friends who have kids, and especially my brother, is that we've already gone and kind of blazed this initial trail for our families. We've gone through some of the adversity, the difficult times. We're laying a foundation, and now our kids, they don't have to go through those same challenges and hurdles. They can get further. I always feel like I'm going like into the jungle in the Amazon. We're having to like get the machete out and like weed whack the path. And that path has already been trailblazed, like the first 100 miles maybe. And so they can get on that path and go down that first 100 miles, and then it's going to be up to them to trailblaze the next 100 miles for their family and the next generation. And that's kind of going back to your theme about compounding and building. That's one way where families can grow and build and compound over generations.
Yeah, very much true. Let's just talk about one last thing before we wrap this up, just how this can really matter in real life. Again, if any of you guys are listening or watching on YouTube and you're an aspiring homeowner, we're both obviously in real estate, so that's what we talk about on a lot of our other episodes. But really, regardless of where you're trying to get better or just maybe dealing with some of these voices in your head, regardless of wherever you are in your life, the voice you listen to determines the life you're going to build. So whether it be buying a home, starting a business, having a really hard conversation with somebody you love, maybe health goals like Ben was talking about earlier, that critic voice, they're just going to straight up say no. That comforter voice, they're going to tell you, well, just do it later. And the coach is going to be telling you to move, take action. So the biggest changes come from obeying that coach voice more often. So just really be intentional about listening to those thoughts in your mind, listen to those voices, and anything that sounds like it maybe is a critic or a comforter, just do your best to limit what you're doing when they talk and focus on that coach voice.
That's right. You're going to hear from all three voices this week. That's normal. The goal isn't to eliminate the critic or the comforter overnight. The goal is to stop handing them their steering wheel. So listen for the coach, strengthen the coach, be more aware of the coach, and let that coach voice become the voice that starts making more of your decisions. We'll see you guys next week on the Pursuit of Progress podcast. I'm Ben Adams for Adam Lang. We love you guys. We'll see you next week.
Catch you next time.